basically added a call with our therapist to help us work through it,
Yes.
in which we went to that call and you were still pretty lit up and you had spiraled it across other areas of your life. Welcome to the Weaponized Marriage Podcast. I'm your host, Kendra Hewitt.
And I'm your host, Ryan Hewitt.
And today's topic is, Ryan,
how to get back on track, right?
Hitting the reset, or what we call repair button.
Okay, what does that mean?
Well, I think this week we had like a couple ups and downs in our relationship where we started to feel like the drift and the disconnect. And we both didn't really address it until it got like pretty festering, I feel like.
Pretty festering?
Yes.
Well, explain. Tell a story.
Why don't you tell the story?
Okay, well, where does it start? So it starts with after our therapy call 2 weeks ago, you got upset a little bit about our money situation. And then you were a little off from there. And then at the same time, your mom's not doing well. Lily's out of school and we're transitioning into summertime, which puts us in a crunch because we have to shuffle babysitting and camps and all that kind of stuff, which I'm sure a lot of parents can relate. So this is all going on in the background, in which I don't understand because I'm not thinking about it until it becomes,
Well, and I don't say anything.
And you don't say anything, yeah. And then Thursday comes along and we're supposed to have a full day of Lily's preschool graduation, and then we're going to have a beach day because it's like we're on like week 18 in a row where the weekends are rainy.
Yes.
So we took advantage of the Thursday, and I booked off all of my blood work calls, but I did have two different, we could call them sales calls or like meetings. And I told Kendra about one of them, but the other one I failed to tell Kendra about, and she got mad about it, and then kind of lost her shit on me. And then, of course, when she loses her shit on me, I lose my shit back on her, and my shit, when I lose it on her, looks a lot worse in public because for some reason, I resort to swear words. And then we ruin the rest of the day with our bad attitudes. And then it carries through the weekend. And then I feel bad. I come to you with like ownership, but you didn't take really much ownership on your behalf. So we did a therapy call about it. And then what we got out of it was we still need work on like how to hit the reset button, or how to like, how to repair disagreements faster. I'm sure a lot of people can relate. I'm sure a lot of people are better than us at this, but we're just going to go over some of the things that we learned from Stephen and some things that are effective for us and our personalities. Maybe some people will relate to our personalities. Maybe you won't. Me, for example, and we talk about the Enneagram a lot, which is a personality profiling. And we do encourage people to really, like, if you haven't done any personality profiling, like you and your spouse, this one is, I think, the best one out there. It's called the Enneagram. There's a 44 question survey. Oh, it's 144. Okay. So it's a pretty,
it doesn't take a long time though.
It's a pretty long survey. And it matches you up with how you naturally are in this like 9 personality type sort of like diagram. And it shows you when you're healthy, when you're not, and your natural personality type, and how
stress affects you.
Well, it being one of the things. Yeah. So the point of it is so you can understand yourself better, and then also understand your partner better, so you can communicate better and have a better marriage and all that stuff. And we're pretty good at forgetting about how we're different.
Mm-hmm.
For me, like, I'm always thinking about the next thing. I'm always like focused on my lists, my tasks, my to-dos, where I need to go, what I need to do, how I need to fit it all in and whatnot. And, for Kendra, in a lot of cases, like, she'll get mad because she'll think that I don't put my family first. Like, I don't put Lily first. I don't put her first, because I'm always just sort of like focused on what I got to get done. So to her, it looks selfish. It looks like I'm a selfish prick.
Which is how you triggered me with the one phone call you
Right.
forgot to tell me about.
Right. Even though to
Be
me, I minimize it. I'm like, well, it didn't really get in the way. It didn't like make you wait or waste
I
time.
was waiting for you, remember?
Barely. So like, I rationalized it in my head, but it wasn't, you did not rationalize it. To you, it was like an egregious, like assault on our day.
Well, I think too is that, like, that's why I wanted you to explain the story. One of the things that was also huge is that a couple of days prior to this, I bravely asked you, "Is your schedule clear on Thursday?" When I asked that, I was not specific. You said yes originally.
And I told you about the one
And
call I
what
had.
you meant was clear of like your normal work consults,
So I
right?
didn't have to be in front of a computer.
Yes. But these 2 calls that you had to do, one you did tell me about, which I know both of these people, right? So one of them I understood what that was for. The other one, I didn't realize you did every week, and that was not for work at that
No,
time
it's not every
because
week.
I
It's
don't
once
know,
a month.
or
And
once
I
a
have to
month.
book it ahead of time,
Okay.
a special time.
So, but what was the challenge was is that I was waiting for you to place a takeout order for that night. So I was sitting there waiting for you to tell me what you wanted. And you assumed that I just decided what I wanted and was going to order,
Yeah,
right?
there's a
And then you said,
failure of communication.
"Oh," I'm like, "Where are you right now?" And you're like, "I'm in the parking
Oh
lot."
yeah. Well, you didn't say it that nice.
Okay. And then on top of that, you said, "I'm in the parking lot. I'm talking to this person." And I was like, "Who is this person?" Like you said you had no calls because I didn't put 2 and 2 together who
Mhm.
like the connection. So we're already like in my mind, another failure on my side was that I did not communicate. One of the big questions we've been doing that has worked really well is like, what does tomorrow look like? Especially when we have a day together of like, hey, I need from this time to this time to do work. I need this time and this time because this is when you're gonna work out. This is when I'm gonna work out. And we had already started the day a little bit interrupted because you didn't go to the gym and when you said you were going to. You decided you were going to go with me, which was fine. And then I was supposed to go get lab
Well,
work
no, it
done.
turned out to not be fine because it was something else that built up in your head that was like things that I did to assault the day and the plan.
Okay. So and then I was supposed to get lab work and that was canceled last minute. So both of us had something that we had already planned to do that now got uprooted. And we had to not change much of our approach, but it meant that we did need to reschedule some things from the
Okay,
start
but
of the morning.
you're going into way too
Okay.
much detail that
No,
doesn't
but what
matter.
I'm saying is that you need to see how it added up in my head for me to understand that for you to understand how I got to that point.
Okay, but here's what you're derailing where I was going with this.
Okay, sorry.
So what I'm saying is that my personality is that, I'm going to do these things, but I can do them on the fly and I still have the day open for my family and everything was fine in my head. But the way that you saw it is that I assaulted the day. So you immediately came to me with like being very, uh, how do I put it? It was very confrontational and like your tone and everything was very like condescending. It was very like critical and very like what I call bitchy, right? So your personality type is that you're always well, I mean, how does that apply to your personality type as far as like that's how you address things when you don't like them? You know what I'm
I
saying?
go into like a much more like Steven calls it like kind of like you did why are you doing this? Like pointing a finger and
Yes.
it goes condescending. And how I asked the question was, where the fuck are you? Now, let me say what happened that I figured out after the fact when I calmed myself down. We both left the takeout place at the same time. But what I started to figure out way after was that you took a different road. You took the highway
Yeah.
and I took the back road.
Okay.
So the back road dropped me at the beach 10 minutes prior
No.
to your
Couldn't have been
yes.
10 minutes.
Yes, because I loaded the whole car
Could have
with
been
all
like
of the
maybe
beach chairs, all the
5
toys.
minutes.
Lily and I went in the bathroom. Ryan, I don't need to explain it. Like,
You're
just,
going into detail, it doesn't
but
matter.
stop tit for tatting. Let me tell you what actually happened in my brain.
Okay.
Okay. So in my brain, I'm like, dude, he's doing another fucking call.
No.
Like he's trying to fit in one more call or one more part of this conversation.
Right. You went into assumptions.
Yes. And then because that's what my brain went to.
Okay.
I said, "Where the fuck were you? I've been waiting here for 10 minutes," which you argued to me that it had been 10 minutes.
Couldn't have been.
This is when I started to figure out that maybe you went a different way. But you were redlined so bad and standing in the middle of
I
the
wasn't
street.
redlined until you came at me like, you know,
Yes,
I
and you're
where the fuck
yelling.
are you? All this stuff. I'm like,
Yes.
no, and
I
then
did not say, "Where the fuck?"
you started in on me like you blah blah blah. Anyway, so and I reacted poorly because it just triggers in me like how like I thought everything was fine, but all of a sudden you're sending the day sideways.
Yes. But here's the big thing with your personality, back to your personality, where are you going with this? Is when something starts to go sideways, you start literally taking a detour where you cannot get back on track.
Okay.
And so I got into the point where I just said, "I'm going to the beach. If you want to come, you can." And you were like, "Should I come or not?" Blah, blah, blah. Like, in just being 5-year-old Ryan.
Sure.
So I have a 4-year-old that really wants to go on the beach in the back, and then I have a 5-year-old yelling, "What the fuck is wrong with you?"
No, I
in
didn't
the
say
middle of
that.
the street, and also in front of Lily, which is what made me go even more sideways in the other direction of like, "I don't care what you effing do. You can go home if this is the way you're gonna act because I don't wanna spend time with you when you're
Okay,
like
so
this."
everyone's got the point of what happened, all right?
Okay?
So
But
now
you have to see both sides of it.
I do see both sides. Now, like there's enough detail about what happened. It's like this whole point of this podcast is like, well, so when things like that happen, how do you get back on track quickly? Because
Yes.
we failed to get back on track
We failed
quickly.
miserably to the point where, like I said, we added you specifically added a call with our therapist to help us work through it.
Yes.
In which we went to that call and you were still pretty lit up and you had spiraled it across other areas of your life.
Okay.
Like you had spiraled it about like things that were going around wrong in the business, things that were going wrong with your personal relationships, things that were going wrong. And instead of us talking about it, this is where I picked up off our conversation last week where I decided I was going to change my approach. And my change, in my approach, my change in approach was I'm just going to let this go until he literally calms down and then I can have a adult conversation with him. But we got to the point where you felt that distant from me that you were like, I need Steven to kind of help us intervene. To which Steven pointed out very quickly that this is something that comes up and reoccurs in a lot of marriages, which is
Right.
why we're talking about today. And he's like, you get better at recovery. But he's like, but what we are starting to see is that you two still do not have a good repair mode.
Right.
Meaning, I don't know personally what to do when you go to that red line zone, and you don't know what to do when I go to the shutdown zone,
Yeah. Well,
right? So
critical bitch
when I
shutdown
go
zone.
into critical bitch and you go into
Reactive asshole.
reactive asshole.
Yes.
Okay, let's call it critical bitch and
Yeah.
reactive asshole because that's
Exactly.
basically
That's
what it is.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
So, and back to the Enneagram, I'm a 6, which is 6 is tends to go into create critical mode when they are feeling attacked.
Right.
Right? So I go into defense.
And when I
I
feel
put
it,
my shield up
right, when I feel attacked, I want to bring out my sword and like fight you.
and you keep swinging.
Right.
Right?
Where you just want to like crawl in your shell and like
Yes. Which
take
I think this is a common scenario, which is why we're
okay.
talking about this today.
Yeah, and it could go both ways. It doesn't mean that the guy's always the one on the attack and the girl's always the one on the defense because I've seen both.
Mhm,
Like
yeah.
sometimes the spouse or the wife is the one on the attack
Yeah.
and the guy withdraws.
Yeah.
Right. It just happens. That's kind of our nature.
Yeah. So what did we take away from our session with Steven? Because I do
Mhm.
feel it was helpful, but we had to digest it a little bit. And that's why we waited to record the podcast till today, because I
Right.
think we still had
Well,
processing.
what
and
did I say last
did.
night? What was my takeaway? 'Cause I forget already.
Oh God.
Well,
That's not
I
good.
told you what it was last night.
I said that mine was going into repair mode. And I think that I can't even remember what you said. So you gotta remember what you said.
Well, okay. Tell me what you got out of it and it'll come to me.
I said about how I realized that you had a lot of layered stuff that you had layered that I had no idea was actually affecting
But I
that
did tell you through I sent you stacks.
oh, yes.
Okay, so I'm actually the only one communicating. You aren't. I'm communicating to you through writing because I am able to express what is actually going on through writing much more effectively through just face-to-face conversation,
Yes.
right?
And you said in that stack, so I'll explain what you said you took away in that stack. What you explained was about how you realized from my point of view of why I got to that critical bitch mode
Yes.
was because I felt that you were not prioritizing your family,
Yeah,
which is true.
which bothers me because in my heart, I do, but my personality type is like, I gotta like do all this stuff to make sure I'm taking care of you guys,
Right.
right? But to you, that doesn't equal taking care of you. It's more like
Yes.
you gotta be present and be with us and whatever. So
And I realized after the fact, after the session, that one of the things is that and you shared with that post you shared with me, is that I explained about how all of the invisible labor of being a mom, and I'm not complaining about that in any way. I hope that doesn't come up as that. But what I said is, I realized that I was feeling really squeezed and triggered by several things from the graduation that unconsciously I had
Mhm.
no idea were affecting me. Let me tell you some of those things because some of these I haven't even told you yet. Number one was we're going to the graduation, and I realize that I'm 44 years old, so I'm a older mom in there, but I'm also the only person showing up pushing my own mom while I'm holding my 4-year-old daughter's hand. I'm pushing my mom in a wheelchair so she can see her graduation because not only am I pushing my mom in a wheelchair because she's physically so limited, but her brain is starting to have challenges. And then I sat down in the chair at the graduation, and usually I think and test all these things before I bring my mom into it, but I didn't have that opportunity, and I sat down in the chair and I was like, "Dude, if my mom sits in this chair, I'm never getting her out." So I quickly made exceptions, and it just hurt my heart
Mm.
to push her in that wheelchair. So I was already somewhat triggered from that side because I'm feeling the unconscious squeeze of an aging parent and a young toddler.
Mhm.
And I'm moving towards a place of acceptance on where she's at and how I'm going to handle that. But I didn't unconsciously, I didn't know that this was underlying. And then I think that that layered into how I responded to you when I was waiting around for you too. Um, and that really kind of triggered me on that, and that was something that I was unable to express, and then you went on the attack, and I was already, like, in this emotionally very vulnerable spot where I couldn't, like, articulate what was going on unconsciously for me.
Okay.
And then, like I said, then I felt like that was you not intentionally, but I felt like you weren't prioritizing us, and I just really needed someone to prioritize me at that point because as a mom, I realize that I'm the caretaker of a lot of people. And again, not complaining about that. It's just nature of not only my personality, but also like generationally how my family, like my mom and my aunt took care of my grandmother took care of everybody else, my grandmother took care of us. So I was having all this generational stuff come up unconsciously, and then I felt like I said, okay, so now I have 3 kids. I'm dealing with 4-year-old Lily, 77-year-old mom, and now my 45-year-old husband who's acting like a 5-year-old in the middle of the street. And it put me, like, completely over.
Mhm.
So that was some of the stuff that I started to realize, and about how knowing that she was done with school, instead of talking to you about, like, "Hey, can we make a plan for summer, and can you help me with this, this, and this?" I just sat there and went back into my old caretaker mode of, "I'll figure all of this out." And then I think that put me, like, completely over the edge
Yeah, and
there.
you were already there too about the money conversation before. You had guilt and shame around how you've taken care of the money side without talking to me about it, because not because I wanted to be in the dark, is because you wanted to be in control.
Well, and also I think that, and this was a big thing I took away from your both your stack and our session, is that I think that I avoid that money conversation or money conversations with you often because part of the way that you typically, being an achiever, number 3 on the Enneagram. So, because I failed to communicate like the summer squeeze, I'm calling it, um, it was bothering me behind the scenes. And what we started to really figure out on our call with Steven is just like how when I don't express things that are bothering me or ask you for help. And one of the things I was saying, like even on our meeting, was about how like we talked about how the money conversation I just really avoid it with you is we got down to the bottom of it, some of the source being resentment.
Mhm.
And one of the things I started to share is that I actually was saying that it's almost a little bit more of fear to me because I don't want to sound like every time we have a money conversation, I'm saying what we have isn't enough. And you go into that mode of where it's like, it's never enough. And like, then you shut down when you get that point. So I think that we were going to talk about some strategies and we're still figuring this out. Like, we're having a real and raw conversation again about like figuring out on, we definitely have way more tools than we had when we first started with Steven like a year ago, but now it's like new level, new devil. It's like
Okay,
new things
so
come up.
here's the thing. So here's you. I can tell you what I need in order to get back on track from you, and then
Sure.
you tell me what you need. So, and Steven has gone through these exact, like, what would you call them, reenactments or
Hmm.
drills, where he has you like look me in the eye, put your hand on my heart, touch me, and just tell me that it's okay, and like actually just connect with me physically, which, like, you still, like, you shut down instead. You just like run away or shut down. So instead of doing that, like putting your hand on my heart or give me a hug and just like hold me for 30 seconds, it puts me in like a better state where I'm calmed down and I can then communicate to you. So that's just like an immediate strategy, kind of like a quick fix type of thing. Hold on. That's what I need from you. But secondly, and I think a lot of couples can relate to this, and I think a lot of people try to do things on the fly. And I think every time we try to do things on the fly, you get angry at me when I don't know how much you're handling or what you've decided to just take care of or that you haven't told me that you need from me. And then when you ask me, it's like, I need this now, or I need this in 2 hours, or how can you do this for me today? And there's no, and like that, immediately I get anxiety because I'm like, well, I already have all these things planned ahead of time. And now you're trying to squeeze in all this stuff to my schedule and it makes me panic. So, like, for us, and we've avoided this for a long time, and again, part of it is because you avoid wanting to connect with me about meeting about money, especially because you think I'm gonna be reactive and upset. So, one of the things that's really important is that we have a weekly meeting for our personal life and then a weekly meeting about our money and our business. Like, as
Mhm.
we could do them back to back, like we do them at the same day if you want, but like,
Which is new for us to
yeah,
try.
so we've like at this point, it's like we've had enough pain now where we're like, okay, like Thursday at 3 o'clock, non-negotiable. We have to be ready to sit down and like come to this meeting, and we're gonna, I think, eventually come up with a better agenda that's gonna be more organized. So we're not like, okay, what's next? And then you're like, what? Why? This? Because you've done that in the past where it's like, oh, this is a waste of time. Like, and then
Well, we come to the meeting and then you're like, "I need this from you." And I'm like,
Mhm.
"Okay, well, why didn't you ask for that before? Because I could have brought that today."
Right. So it has to be, and again, it's like communication about the meeting, which is about, getting back on track with our communication. So those are the two things like that I got from our call with Steven is like, if you want to calm me down, like just like don't go in your shell. Don't like start criticizing and berating me and telling me about all the things that I've fucked up or done wrong to get to this point already. Like, okay, let's move forward, touch me and like reset. Like that's like an immediate reset for me. And then as far as like staying out of crisis from a proactive standpoint is like we need to commit to this meeting once a week for our personal life and for our business and money, and like stay organized about where our money's going, where our money is coming from, and what is our like future vision about where we're putting this money. And then in our personal life, it's like, what's Lily's schedule? What do you need from me to participate in her life and take, you know, take things off of my plate to help me,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, so what Steven told you is that what he heard me say was that I need you, and he was saying that universally with men, he finds this is very common scenario, that women are under the pressure of the invisible labor, and then on top of it, what they need you to do is ask and initiate, "How can I help you?" Even
Very
when
good.
and he
Yes.
was saying about how one of the things I need to get better at, me being Kendra, and he finds most women struggle with as well, is that men don't initiate, "How can I help you?" or "Take something off your plate,"
That was my
because
takeaway
they
that I
just
remember now. Yes.
assume
Mhm.
that you got it handled, which I think
Well, especially with Lily. Yes. With Lily, I do
yes.
that by default. And I understand why that's not good.
And he was saying about how, like, I've enabled that pattern a little bit too because I'm also, like, hyper responsible. Like, I will just jump in and I will take care of it
Mhm.
without expressing that I need help.
Mhm.
Because in my mind doesn't work that way of like, "Oh, I should ask so and so to help me with this. That will make it easier for me." In my mind, my first thing is, "This is way easier if I just do this myself."
Yeah.
And
But then hang it over your head later and get angry and bitchy under subconsciously.
yes,
Yes.
and the one of the other things that I think that was really valuable is him explaining that, most women, like he said, most men will not initiate. Most women really struggle to ask what we want, and because we are not culturally encouraged to do so. And he was saying, and then if we look at familial patterns, you also see that run really hard in, especially, and he said in families that have generational of women as caretakers,
Mhm.
and which is most females natural psychology, whether they are thinking about it or not, is to be a caretaker of some sort.
Mhm.
That's how the race continue, or generations continue. So what he was saying is that, even when I was in the minute he started talking about this, like, I started to look at, even at that session, of all of the times both Steven and you asked me a question that I could not answer clearly what I wanted.
Mhm.
Like, I would be like, "And then this," and I would say to Steven, I would say, "I don't know how to articulate this." So he's like, "Well, say it how you're hearing it in your head, and then I'll help you navigate articulating it." And he was like, "So what that from that session, what came out is that men need to be better at initiating even when they think their women's got it covered.
Initiating, asking you what you
Asking
need.
for, like, "How can I make your day better? How can I make your
How
day,"
can I take
like,
things off your
"How
plate?
can I take things off your plate?"
Yeah.
And be open to receiving whatever that woman says, even if it's a download of like, "Well, it would be awesome if you did this, this, and this, and this." She doesn't necessarily mean all in that day, but he's like, start by asking, like, "What's one thing like, clearly asking, "What's one thing I could take off your plate for today?" And there will be days that I will say, "I don't know," because I don't know, right? And he's like, "But then there will be other days that would be like, it would be really helpful if you just put Lily's shoes on her feet." Because she like, that is always something that makes me late or something like that. And then, when it comes to the woman, what I took away from me personally is that, just like I said, is like, man, how fucking hard it is for me to very clearly explain what I want, and how confusing it must be for you because
Yeah, it's fucking weird.
I'm expecting you to read your mind, which is a very common female pattern, right? So, even at today's meeting, our 3 o'clock meeting, this was the first time we did it, where we did the personal and the business together. I said, "Okay, we're going to start with summer schedule." And you're like, "Well, we already talked about that." And I'm like, "Well, we already talked about that on the fly. We did not sit down with our freaking calendars and say, here's the day at camp. Here's what time day of this. Here's when you're going to make dinner. Here's when I'm going to make dinner." We did not talk about that. And I already felt an immense relief from just having it as our conversation, where I was able to ask, and you were like, you were able to accommodate everything I asked for. But I was like, wow, that felt good. So that was a good
Okay.
strategy.
So in summary, what is it that you what are ways that you are able to get back? What are ways that you need from me in order to get back on track when we're
I think we
sideways?
just said it.
Well, just summary.
Men need to initiate
So
asking, how can I?
you want me to ask you on a daily basis, how can I help you today?
Yes. And
Okay.
I need to get better at knowing what I want the outcome to be and then backtracking clearly what I want to ask you for to help me with, instead of on the fly just being like, why can't you just help me like get her out the door? It's like, hey, on Tuesdays and Thursdays, you're home, so I need you to help me do this. So I think that getting that more level of clarity. Also, one thing that I think we should bring up from this session that I think was really helpful is that Stephen kind of broke down too, is that like you as a 3 and me as a 6. There is going to be a time when I go into critical bitch, like because that is part of my personality. Just like there's a time when you go into achiever 3 work mode where Stephen explains it, achiever 3, which was Ryan's type, as a kite, where it's literally like I'm holding on to this string of this kite and I have to start reeling it in. When you start getting kind of like in your achiever mode where your blinders are on and you don't see anything but like whatever goal you're going to or whatever task you need to complete. So he's saying part of working with your Enneagram type in your marriage or just your spouse in general is knowing is like, hey, when do I draw the line of when this is becoming a problem or unhealthy?
Mhm.
Meaning you get unhealthy by focusing just on work mode and having those blinders on. I got unhealthy by going into the mode of I'll just do everything myself because it's
Oh,
easier.
Ryan's an asshole, so I can just do it myself and I'll just like, do it and be resentful about it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And hold it over his head.
Well, yeah,
Like,
that's what I mean, but that's where the resentment
and
comes
then I'll
from.
get critical about it. Like of like, you never help me do
Yeah,
this. Or
and then what are the symptoms of that? Well, the symptoms are you get, like, snippy, just totally dissociate from me physically and don't like, there's no sex happening when, like, you're not feeling connected to me in that regards,
yeah.
right? So, that's what I'm saying, like, there it's not always, like, just a fight, like, it's not always, like, there's a fight
Yeah.
happening and it's a clear, disconnection, sometimes it's just as subtle as that, like, "Oh, I'll just handle it, I guess, because Ryan's off doing his
Mhm.
thing," versus like, "Oh, had you asked me for help with that thing you need help with, more often than not, I always do what you ask me to do, but I'm happy to help you." And then you feel better about it, and then we're happier.
Yeah. And I think too is that like in closing, just reminding yourself, which I wasn't very good at this week, reminding myself is that like you either choose to connect and you make that happen or you choose to disconnect.
Yeah, just know that everybody's fucked up.
Yeah.
Every everyone
And here's the thing.
everyone everyone has their things about their personality, and it's not going hopefully, it's not the same as your spouse, because if it is, then, that long term doesn't work
Yeah.
usually.
Well, but the reason I say the choose to connect and choose to disconnect thing is because it's like you are going to ebb and flow of times when you feel super connected. Like when we were in Spain,
Mhm,
like a couple weeks ago, out of our environment, we felt very connected on all fronts,
mhm.
right? But then the real challenge is when you come back to your daily life and you start feeling the squeeze of different stressors that you're not able to convey. Like I was talking about, even with my mom, and you consciously are starting to feel the disconnect happen, but you're not willing to do anything about it until it becomes a problem or a blowout fight. So, I think that just, like, in closing is that, like, looking at your marriage and just saying, like, "Hey, where are areas of our lives that I am consciously connecting? Like, I'm making an effort,
Mm.
right? And I feel good about them." Versus where are areas that, like, "Listen, I feel a little bit disconnected in this." It might be physical intimacy. It might be money. It could be a very different it could be like, "Hey, how we're parenting this kid versus that kid." Um, and you're gonna go through stages of that. So, how do you hit repair mode? Because if you are going through repair mode into repair mode by default, it probably looks like, just like I said, what we're doing, what we were doing before, which is before, like I said, we did this even session with Steven where he pointed out and made us aware that part of it is that our relationship has evolved, but our repair mode hasn't.
Yeah.
So we need to
And it's
work
not
on that.
it's not repair mode by default. It's like you go back to default and fail to repair.
Yeah.
Right. And then what happens is you end up going back to default, because no matter what, when you're triggered or when you're like, those emotions will eventually come down. Right. But if you're not aware of what's happening and working towards getting better, you know, if you lack the awareness and you're not working on it, then you'll always keep going through these roller coaster of whatever it is, fights or collisions or whatnot. And you'll never make progress, right? So it's about recognizing when you're in the mixer with, you know, your spouse, and then having those repair mechanisms to continue to work on that. And then what happens is it's like chiropractic care with somebody who's got a problem. It's like, you know, we start to do the right things and get the joints moving better, and we start to, you know, correct your movement patterns and regulate your nervous system. It's like, well, you know, the pain levels will start to decline. The times between acute, you know, symptoms will get longer and longer in between. And when they are acute, they're not quite as big of blowouts. Right.
Mhm.
So it's, you know, that's it. Best.
Yeah, and also too is that, like, I think like I said, is that it's you're either growing together, like, as cliche as this sounds, you're either growing together or growing apart.
Right.
And you have to make a conscious effort. Like, everybody that's listening to this, in my opinion, is going to they want to grow together,
Yeah.
right? There are gonna be moments where you feel like you are not on the same path. And the repair mode is like, I think about like it as like patching a tire. It's like, do you have or like, are you someone that has jumper cables in your car? Like, do you have tools that you can use when you start to break down
Yeah.
in your marriage that you can access?
And their communication strategies always.
Yeah,
Everything boils down to a communication problem.
totally. And it's like, but like, do you also have, like I said, tools to fix it? And this is part of how, like, I look at therapy is a part of one of our tools in our tool belt that we didn't have until recently.
Yeah.
For us to utilize at this point. And I feel blessed that we have someone in our tool belt that we trust. So just looking at like, hey, here's my available tools that I have right now, and just constantly saying, like, how do I add a new tool to my tool belt for that repair mode? For when that tire gets flat, or when that, like, bumper falls off, or when you need to jump your car.
All right. That's a good place to wrap it up.
Okay. So if you like this episode, share it with someone you know who might benefit from it. And as always,
Rate, review, and share.
and subscribe.
And subscribe. Sorry.
And we'll
Yeah,
see you
just
next
fucked that
time
up.
on the Weaponized Wellness, or
See ya.
Weaponized Marriage
Weaponized Marriage
podcast.
Podcast. See you next week.